4, 3, 2, 1.
Cue music.
This is Movies First with Alex First.
A charming and delightful introduction to women's liberation in a small, tranquil Swiss village. This one takes a gently approach to the subject matter, rather than hitting it with a sledgehammer. It's an uplifting, respectful and amusing crowd pleaser. The year is 1971. Nora is a young housewife and mother who lives with her husband Hans and their 2 sons. She's a quiet person who goes about her daily life without fuss or bother. She's liked by everyone and is never one to step out of line. That is until the day she starts to publicly and eventually fiercely fight for women's suffrage, which Swiss men had a vote on February the 7th, 1971. Nora's resistance and her need to become active in the fight for the equality of women starts when her husband at first resists and later refuses to give her permission to go back to work. The added fact that her teenage niece Hannah has been sent away to reform school and then a women's prison because she did not conform to the small-town conventions of the village also spurs her on. Nora realises that it's not enough to be in favour of the vote silently, but that women need to demand it, loud and clear. She's supported by the widow and former owner of a restaurant, Vroni, and by Graziella, a divorced Italian woman who took over that restaurant and opened a pizzeria, and later by her sister-in-law, Therese. In the process, they naturally lock horns with the men in the village. The fact is that Switzerland did not grant women the same political rights as men until very late in the piece. It was one of the last developed democracies in the world.
You're listening to Movies First. For more, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
The Divine Order is the first feature film about Swiss women's suffrage and its late introduction. Writer and director Petra Volpe conducted extensive research before writing her script, determined to capture the atmosphere of the time and not simply historical facts. She succeeds in telling a story that depicts just how unfree women were back then, how much they were treated like possessions, and how great the opposition was even in 1971 when the women demanded equal political rights. While the film undoubtedly works pulling the caring, sharing strings, there are times when I felt the kid-glove treatment of the material was too respectful, too saccharine sweet. Mind you, as the central protagonist, Marie Leuenberger does a great job. Her awakening becomes the town's awakening. She becomes emboldened from a base of 0, and that transformation is indicative of what happens in her village over time. I also appreciated the development of the characters around her and the series of subplots in the film involving individual family circumstances. The gentle humour in the piece isn't lost on me either and often works a treat. This is a totally different look at an important subject than, say, the 2015 film Suffragette, featuring Kerry Mulligan, that focused upon the foot soldiers of the early feminist movement. The Divine Order is no less significant, and sometimes a velvet glove can get you far further than dynamite. It scores a 7 out of 10.
You've been listening to Movies First with Alex First. Subscribe to the full podcast at Audioboom, Stitcher and iTunes, or your favourite podcast distributor. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.